Mike Raia, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be in person and in studio right now.
Welcome to Bartholomew Town, RIPodcast.com 2026 at the Salty Brine Broadcast Center, the home of WPRO. Here we are.
Gotta love it. I mean, there's not a lot going right in 2026, but this feels right.
Yeah, definitely nice to be in here. And we'll be rolling out a lot more stuff with video and all kinds of stuff over the course of the year. As we teased in a press release that Half Street Group released late last year, of course, Mike, the founder and president of Half Street Group, in with us every month for Inside Communications, where we break down the hottest media analysis. You heard the promo a zillion times now. Mike, when we look at the immediate moment right now, this is a boring governor's race on a lot of levels, but we've got a new candidate that just got in, Ken Block, who, look, for a lot of people who follow politics closely, they know who Ken Block is. But the recap, he founded the Moderate Party in 2010, which is shocking. It's been that long. Lost, but got the Moderate Party to a level of credibility, ran as a Republican in 2014 for governor, lost to Alan Fung in that primary. And it's just kind of been around politics as oftentimes a critic of now the governor, especially on the Washington Bridge, but sort of a government watchdog. You were Gina Raimondo's spokesperson inside those meetings. Just on a general level right now, on an observational level, what does this Ken Block conversation do to what does Ken Block's entrance do to the Rhode Island political conversation?
I think it gives people something to talk about for the next week or two. And then it will be seen as to whether or not candidates in the other campaign should take him that seriously. Yeah. I think Dan McGowan hit it on the head a little bit in Roadmap today of this is another kind of wrinkle into a governor's race. There's a long tradition in Rhode Island of having these quixotic third party or independent candidates that come in. I mean, we elected Link Chafee as an independent governor. I don't think he blows up or changes the Democratic primary in too much, which really, I mean, for all intents and purposes, is probably the race for the general election anyway in this state, looking at what the demographics are, looking at how seriously the state Republican Party seems to be taking the governor's race. And I don't think that he's going to necessarily upend any component of that. If anything, he might give the governor a little bit of a headache because of his credible critique of the Washington Bridge. I do think that Ken Block comes at that conversation with credibility as someone who lives on the East Bay, as someone who has been a bit of this government efficiency or making government work properly gadfly persona that he's brought about. But I do kind of find it like I had my head scratching a little bit of the effect of, is this the best thing for Ken Block to be doing to be able to give back to Rhode Island? I mean, here's a guy who, by all intents and purposes, has been extraordinarily successful. He's pocketed or not pocketed. That sounds pejorative. He's earned millions. Guy doesn't need to work on a daily basis. Is running a quixotic campaign for governor in what's likely going to be losing to whomever wins the Democratic primary. The best use of those resources. That's for him to decide. I mean, right. I think that there's certainly opportunity for him to be able to do other things, to be able to contribute where he might be able to have a more meaningful impact than scoring a couple of points about his kind of key topics or his key pet peeves. But that's up to him. At the end of the day, I think right now it's those of us like you and I and McGowan and Ted Nesi and others who kind of pay attention to what's happening on a quiet Easter weekend around Rhode Island politics. It gives us something to chat about for a week or two, maybe three. But I think after that, we're going to really fall into Dan versus Helena, them arguing their points, them getting into their media spend, them getting into their debate prep. And all eyes are really going to be on that first Wednesday in September.
Yeah, the Democrat, the primary day here in Rhode Island. It's interesting because Ken said that he's going to take a little bit of time to really assess this from a fundraising standpoint and infrastructure standpoint.
But he doesn't have it. It's April 6th right now that we're recording this. The even though he's not running in a primary, he's got the two leading candidates for it. Both have sizable war chests. both will be on TV and on radio probably in a matter of weeks, and will sustain that to be able to be on there. He doesn't have this time to like sit around and figure out, oh, who's going to be my campaign manager? Who's going to be this? Like, that's and this again goes to like, is this the best use of his time, his talent, his resources, his dollars, if he's looking to make a change in Rhode Island? And who knows, maybe I'm wrong, but I can see certainly many, many better ways for that to culminate. And I do think like if media is taking him seriously, and I think that the reporting that we've seen on it already, at least those who cover politics, are taking him seriously enough as a former candidate. But the guy hasn't won anything yet. He's failed twice in his efforts to run. And if he's going to get this same level of attention by media, I think he is owed the same opportunity to field the tough questions that Governor McKee and Helena Foulkes and even to an extent, and in fairness, Aaron Guckian have had to get. And I think first and foremost among some of those would be kind of questions about, what does your government look like? And here's a guy who's he's an independent contractor. He's a IT consultant who's done very, very well. And he clearly is able to put very good consulting teams together. But who is he thinking about that would be his transition director? Who would be his DOA director? Who would he talk to be able to get advice on who his transportation director would be? That if he's to be taken seriously, it can't just be he started the Reform Party, which got 5% of the vote in 2014, and we should take him as seriously as we're taking the other candidates who have institutional backing, the proven ability to be able to raise over $1 million from thousands of donors across the state, and those traditional things of what merit someone to be taken seriously as a candidate.
Right. How do the candidates message on Ken Block? The candidates being the governor, McKee, and Helena Foulkes, if at all.
I think that's actually the question there, is like, to what extent do you engage? I think, and again, like I said, I think he probably is more of a headache at this moment in time for Governor McKee than he is for Helena Foulkes, and just in part because of Ken's obsession with the Washington Bridge, and people can criticize me for having a very similar obsession with the Washington Bridge.
Yeah.
But I think that because of the things of competence around the bridge, the critiques that he's made on social media in the past couple of weeks about the challenges at DOA with the W-2s and the Rhode Island Umbrella Company and some of those things, I think he immediately presents a little bit more of a headache for McKee. But if I were advising this campaign, I'd say ignore him. There's no candidate, no established candidate has an obligation or a responsibility to elevate an opponent, particularly an opponent who is coming into a race more as a gadfly, and with a perception more of trying to play spoiler than anything else. So my advice to them would be, have factual responses, be engaging with media when necessary, but you don't need to necessarily tear out 3 pages of your Oppo book on him and start dropping dimes all over him. He's not going to upend the Democratic primary in that way. You got to win that race, and then if you do, then you can start paying a little bit of attention to him. But I don't think that he's a factor of any size during the primary season, and I don't think, unless he's able to prove otherwise, that I would not, if I were a candidate, spend exorbitant amount of time creating a Ken Block specific general election strategy. I would create a general election strategy that includes multiple candidates, but I don't think it needs to be centered on one individual personality.
Yeah, and likely those strategies would look very different whether if you're Governor McKee or if you're Helena Foulkes.
Oh, 100%. And what I find just I think in many ways the most head scratching is it's not as though he's jumped like when you look at some of these past races, like the 2018 Joe Trillo tried to play that part of spoiler, and he went after Alan Fung on the right. Like on the far right. But in other years, you've had these things where you are trying to give kind of moderate Democrats or this population that Rhode Island still has of these quote unquote Reagan Democrats or the Biden Trump voters an alternative to something that might seem further left than where they typically are.
Yeah.
When you look at this race, like there's two candidates who they have a lot that's very different about their style, about their approach, about their general argument to the voters of why they should be trusted with 4 years as governor. But I think it would be a very difficult thing for anybody to paint either Helena Folks or Dan McKee as the second coming of AOC in Rhode Island, which I find just perplexing that someone who created the moderate party, someone who espouses himself as this kind of in the middle common sense guy, there's not really a lane for him to be able to lean into to play that role of spoiler.
Yeah.
In a way where if we had an Aaron Regenberg running for governor, I mean, if Aaron had won that lieutenant governor's race in 2018 and he were sitting as an accidental governor right now running for a third term, I think then you have a very different conversation about the need for or the appetite for a kind of centrist white business type kind of stepping into that lane.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about what this governor's race says about, especially with Ken Block's entrance. It says about the left, if you will, the left of the Democrat Party right now, that there is nobody that is the obvious person to run for governor.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like there was this big wave, and there was a big wave in 2020, and there's been different kinds of waves of left success. And in many ways, there's this appetite that we're seeing around the country against incumbents that could help Ken Block. But it almost feels like in a Democrat primary, that's the advantage. You go one way with Helena Folks, you go another way with person X. But person X doesn't seem to exist in Rhode Island that can fulfill that leftist role that also is credible.
I think governor's races are different. I think if you look across the country, the kinds of candidates for, and this is both true with a couple of exceptions maybe on the right, but generally those candidates who come through a primary to be able to run for governor and be able to be palatable in a general election, they're not that partisan. Like, even if you were to look at someone like a Gavin Newsom, who is very capital D Democratic, when you get down to his core policies and you get down to the way that he governed, it was not from any strict ideology or 144 character type methodology in the way that he was going to put that. And that's just the nature of the job. You need to be a pragmatist. You need to be someone who's able to make deals, who's able to work with multiple interests and not necessarily even partisan interests. You've got to be able to work with labor and with management. You've got to be able to work with an urban constituency and a suburban constituency, regardless of how big or small your state is. So I think when you look at this kind of rise of candidates or elected officials or voices like Mandami, like AOC, like others that we see as part of the left, quote unquote, in the Democratic primary, or in Democratic politics, they're in legislative circles, or they're in areas where they're representing a smaller geographic region, whether it's a city, whether it's a county, because governor really doesn't lend you that opportunity to be able to do it. Because look at the Republicans who are governors, like out there, like they are, with maybe the exception of the Texas governor, maybe the exception of some of the Dakota governors, like these are pragmatists. Like they need to be able to balance a budget. They need to be able to make sure that their transportation departments are repairing bridges. So they don't have that same luxury of chasing the latest trending topic on X or the latest kind of Twitter outrage or podcast outrage about something that doesn't actually impact the vast majority of their constituents, which is why, like, you look at all of this stuff. I can't even think of the podcaster's name, but there's this big fight going on X among progressives and among Democrats right now of how much should we pay attention to this podcaster who's supposed to be the Democrats' version of Joe Rogan.
Yeah. I forget his name.
Whatever. Right. But it's like, I'm a pretty plugged in Democrat that has worked on more than a handful of races. Like, voters don't care. And when it comes to those things that governors need to pay attention to, there's not as much of an appetite in it. So I think that's why, going back to your original question of where is that person that kind of picks up the flag of an Aaron Regenberg who lost 2 straight elections, and why hasn't anyone picked it up? And I think it's in part because that's not what voters are looking for in a governor. Yeah. They're not looking for someone to kind of be a protester in chief or a demonstrator in chief or an activist in chief. They're looking for a CEO of the state.
Yeah, I think the same is going to be an interesting litmus test for the Providence mayor race. We see new polls that David Morales is not counting undecided voters and in a pretty good position. I don't have the poll in front of me, but at the end of the day, how many voters who are pragmatists are going to move away from Smiley and to Morales? That's obviously his challenge. Yep. It's a litmus test. We're going to have to see how that plays out. Really.
Yeah. No, and I think that is an interesting race. And I say this kind of with the full disclosure, Brett Smiley is a close friend. And I do think that Brett will win that race at the end of the day. But I don't think it's going to be easy. And I don't think it's one that he's taking for granted or the people around him are taking for granted in any capacity. And what will be interesting with that is, particularly in something like a local race like that, so much of what happens 6 weeks before the election is what's going to matter in that. I think that any of the criticism that Mayor Smiley got for the first snowstorm, I think he did a good job in the second one of being able to buttress against some of it, in part by level setting expectations of the amount of snow that we get, the kind of equipment that is reasonable for a state like Rhode Island or a city like Providence to have. But I don't think that he didn't do a great job in the last snowstorm is the only message that you can win on, or I don't think that alone is enough to win on in a primary when it's going to be 85 degrees outside. So I do think like that, like the mayor's advantage and the advantage of incumbency, which I think Mayor Smiley is very well equipped and understands how to use in a way that others in the state might not. That power of incumbency is going to be very important in that race, to be able to show the importance of having a mayor focused on the core attributes of the job, rather than I want to be leading from the front on this kind of social issue or this movement that we're seeing pop up among. And it's not to say that those things aren't important. And I will say too, like, I will not be surprised if David Morales is the next mayor of Providence. I don't think it's going to happen after this election, but I do think that he is going to be a second-term Brett Smiley successor.
That's an interesting analysis as well, and it's really important to, I think, put things into that long view. And the 2030 races, I mean, look, John Gonzalez, Providence City Councilor, it's pretty clear from the outside looking in. I haven't spoken to anybody about this on a direct level, but it seems like he has aligned himself with Mayor Smiley pretty well. So to me, it becomes a question of Morales's playbook right now. Is it, even if it's not successful in 2026, he might be learning something about the Smiley brand, the Smiley apparatus, the machine, whoever the disciple, if you will, of Smiley is in 2030, and run that same playbook, but better. So there's a lot to learn from this 2026 campaign, even if it's not a victory. Are you ready to take the next step in your career? At URI Online, we offer business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, our online programs provide the flexibility you need with a high-quality education you deserve. Learn from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online. Learn anywhere with us.
You and your employees work hard for your customers. At HealthSource RI for Employers, we work hard for all of you. We offer access to 18 quality health insurance plans plus dental, flexible costs to meet your budget and get your staff what they need, and customized local support to guide you through it all. More than 1,200 Rhode Island employers choose health insurance through us. HealthSource RI. We work for you. HealthSourceRI.com/employers.
Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by Newport Film Visit newportfilm.com. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by Waterfire Providence. Visit waterfire.org. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Raia for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. Follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.
Right. I mean, I often think that candidates are made better when they lose a race. I think if you look at, I think Mayor Smiley is actually a great example of it. He didn't technically lose his first race for mayor. He dropped out to be able to back Mayor Alorza or future Mayor Alorza because of the threat that Buddy Cianci posed. But you learn a lot from going through that. I mean, running for office, God, I would never do it. But I've been close enough to people who have. I've worked on those campaigns. It's incredibly lonely. It's you wake up every day. It's a nature of self-doubt in the business model. In doing it for the first time, you don't know what questions to ask. You don't know what to necessarily expect, and no one can fully prepare you for it. And I do think that that's one where and look at the thing. People talk about Governor McKee being the survivor. He's one of these. Got to remember, he lost a race in Cumberland, and it seems as though some of that he learned from. I think those candidates, and you look at kind of the unartful fall of Speaker Mattiello.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this guy never lost a race. He came within a couple of whispers of losing one of the races he had when he was Speaker of the House, and his lesson from it wasn't, oh my God, I need to go do some things differently, or oh my God, maybe I need to get better touch with my community. It was, I'm invincible. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
And he got blown out in his next race. So there is something to say of running a race, running it well, but not prevailing, and it making you a stronger candidate down in the future.
Yeah. Look, hard pivot here, but it's also directly related to this race because I think that there's just an way underwhelming conversation right now about AI in general when it comes to Rhode Island, but also specifically this governor's race. I know that the governor doesn't necessarily need to be, using open claw to facilitate more efficient use of whatever, the Department of Administration. But we need to have a strategy and understand where things are going, data centers and all of that. So that is that's the pivot. That's sort of the focal point. But it takes us to this New York Times article that you flagged that I also happen to read. The headline, "Forget the AI apocalypse. Memes have already nuked our culture." And look, in essence, I totally agree with a lot of this article in theory, which is that we're numbed or conditioned to a meme culture that, as we assess AI, both the threats and the benefits, we've already been sort of memeified in the way we look at things, so we can be a little bit delusional and detached.
Right. I mean, I've seen this article popped out at me because I recently listened to another podcast that was kind of critiquing one of the books about culture being dead, and the fact that pop music has not changed dramatically. If I driving in here today, listening to 93.3, like I'm hearing
92.3.
Yes,
there we go.
Yeah.
We're right downstairs from where we're recording right now. 92 Pro FM.
Exactly. I should have just said Pro FM and not screwed up the numbers. But listen to it, it's the same songs that were on the radio when we were in high school. And there's something about this culture getting stagnated. And I think going back to bringing these things together, we were talking about these campaigns. when I was in grad school for political communication, it was not just this idiom or adage of you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. Like, that was the reality. You really did. Like, we would go and like you would have the Tale of Two Cities speech that Cuomo gave at the Democratic convention in 88 or 92. You've got the Morning in America style ads that Ronald Reagan was pushing forward. You had Bill Clinton changing culture by going on Arsenio Hall for one of the first times, but then immediately after being able to give the Man from Hope speech. We don't have that in our campaigning anymore.
Right.
Now it is boiled down to what is going to be able to resonate in those 8 seconds. What thing is going to be able to be shared over a text message that someone's going to be able to watch without audio. Going back to the 2020 race, the 2016 race, the 2024 race, I can't really remember a line that sticks out in any sort of way in those campaigns. That we are still campaigning now in headlines. And I think in many ways, like that the memification has also found its way into governing. And there is kind of this sense, and governing is designed to be hard. This isn't just a Lin-Manuel Miranda line of politics is easy, governing is harder. Governing is hard. It is coalition building. It is unsexy. It is intended with checks and balances written into whether it's the federal constitution or state constitutions to not be something that any one branch is able to ram down anyone's throat. So it gets to a place where you have to compromise, where you have to have all parties a little bit upset with it, where you have to embrace incrementalism to be able to get to large goals. But we're in this era of memification, but also in this era, and we talked about this when we talked about the snowstorms a couple of months ago, of a culture of instant gratification. So what you end up with are interest groups and organizations and subsets of the population that will essentially say, if you're not 100% with me, you're against me. Even if our goals are aligned, or even if we're close to the same ideology or close to the same priorities, if you don't share every single one of the tenets of my beliefs, we're enemies, or we can't align, or we can't partner on it, which means there's no opportunity for any of that success. And that's really complex. There is a lot of academic thought and literature that can go into the psychology around all of that, but it's a hell of a lot easier to substitute it with a meme or a clip from Joe Rogan or from Pod Save America that aligns with where people are already thinking.
Yeah. I mean, it's the ultimate consequence of brain rot. I mean, there's the fact that that the human experience is diminished. It leads to an unwell state, that's for sure. But it's also unwell for democracy. And you're right. We focus a lot on the politics, the elections, and it no doubt is far easier than governance. I think that the proof is in the pudding. Just take a look at the government shutdown right now, and that's a perfect example.
Yeah, and like politics is easy. It is it's cutthroat. It's hard work, but it's black or it's white. Governing is designed to live in the gray, and because we all live in the gray, the work that we do, the relationships that we have with our families, with our friends, with our neighbors, they all live in the gray because none of us are so simple that we can boil those things down to black and white. But on an election day, when you have do you vote for this person or do you vote for this person, or do you vote for this ideology or do you vote for that ideology? It is that simple. And I do think that there are basic truths. I think that we've abandoned this area of both sides can agree to disagree. I think that we do need to have a general belief system of, we're not going to refer to proven, dated facts as opinion. We are not going to kind of settle on this sense of there's a basic human decency or basic human rights are not political topics. Those are topics of we all deserve to be able to live in the communities or live in the world that we're in. But there is this need for recognition within this. And I do think that we can do that through language. We can do that through the way that we converse. We can do that through the stories that organizations or leaders and others choose to tell, that the world is a lot grayer than any of us in 2026 want to let it be.
Mike Raia, Half Street Group, halfstreetgroup.com. Inside Communications on Bartholomew Town every month. Come for the goods.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for not asking me about Real Housewives of Rhode Island.
Yeah, we'll save that for another time. Let's let the thing wrap up, and then we can do a recap.
Fair enough.
Waterfire is pleased to announce an open call for artists for America Unfinished, a large-scale group exhibition from July 2nd through August 30th at the Waterfire Art Center. America Unfinished brings together works that examine the systems, stories, and spaces that have shaped and continue to shape the idea of America. Emerging and established artists are invited to apply, but make sure you do so before Sunday, April 12th at 11:59 p.m. For more information and to access the application, visit waterfire.org.